Back in college many years ago, I studied biology. My major was biology. I got my degree in biology. And one big part of studying biology was studying this thing called evolution. Well, evolution is still going on, and that's what I'd like to talk about. I'd like to talk about the evolution that's going on with humanity still. And I'm not talking becoming bigger and stronger and necessarily more clever or more aggressive or more tough or having more children, all the things that we think about in animal evolution that make animals, humans being one animal, more fit. Oh, the most fit creatures, the ones that do the most evolving, are the ones that have the most children. Go forth, procreate, have tons of children. I don't think that's where it's at anymore. When I think about evolution now, I think about the evolution of consciousness, the evolution of what goes on in our mind, our wisdom, our awareness. And this is a very different type of evolution. It's very much evolution in terms of biology. We are biological creatures, but it goes so much faster than regular biological evolution by natural selection, Darwinian evolution, post-Darwinian evolution. The reason I say that is because evolution, Darwinian evolution, evolution of beings, living creatures, takes many, many, many generations. What's a generation of humans? 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, at minimum 15 years. One whole generation, the next generation. Maybe 10 generations you can see some evolution happen. Maybe 100, maybe 1,000 generations. But the kind of evolution I'm talking about, the evolution of consciousness, not only can happen within an individual's lifetime, it can happen within a year. It can happen within a month. It can happen within a day. It can happen within a moment. I think, and I've heard this, it can happen within one YouTube video. Now, there are some creatures that evolve very quickly, some bacteria that can evolve over a matter of weeks, or mice. How quickly can a mouse be born and then start reproducing? A few weeks, a few months, something like that. Many, many generations of mice can happen within 1 year. But human evolution of consciousness, the evolution of our psychology, can happen even faster than that. And that's my hope. And that's also my observation. Observations being the fundamental part of science. I have observed this, not just in other people, but in myself, and first and foremost, primarily in myself. I've seen myself change. I've had moments in my life that profoundly changed me, profoundly affected the evolution of my outlook on existence, on the world, on myself, changed my frame of how I was interacting with the world, changed my relationship with myself. I mean, I went through the evolution. If this happened over a period of a couple of years, probably 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, something like that, where I went from hating myself into loving myself. I mean, that's a profound evolutionary shift. And the irony is, the things for which I hated myself were the same things for which I actually ended up loving myself. I hated myself for my ability to be so honest, my ability to be so true, so real, so passionate, my necessity to speak my mind, my necessity to be a real individual, to not fake it, to be authentic. I hated myself for that. And my evolution caught up with me. And at some point, my consciousness evolved, and suddenly, because of the shift in my consciousness, I realized those were my best qualities, and I started loving myself for it. And then my growth, my emotional growth, my psychological growth, my consciousness growth propelled forward massively. I started allowing myself, or even being allowed within myself, to ask more penetrating questions, more open questions, asking questions that as a child I'd never been allowed to ask. I also started realizing that I had evolved out of my family system, and that this was a good thing. And I also realized that most of the world had not evolved out of its family system, and for that reason was on the side of my parents. When I evolved, or really when I started evolving out of my family system because of my highly evolved or more highly evolved consciousness, the world criticized me. The world said I was making a mistake. The world said I was screwed up and sick in different ways. And I realized I was actually healthier. And suddenly I realized my consciousness puts me at odds with the rest of my species. And that's when it started dawning on me. Am I even part of this species anymore? Maybe I've evolved into kind of a new species. Now, biologically, scrape the inside of my cheek, take some epithelial linings from inside of my cheek and test my DNA. You're going to find out I'm human. At least I think I am. I don't think I've ever had my DNA tested. But I've got my regular number of chromosomes that human beings have. I have all the characteristics physically of a human being. But even in college, when I was studying about Darwinian evolution, there are some animals that actually can interbreed with other species, but they're different. Maybe the species are separated by a mountain, so they're on different sides of the mountain. They don't actually crossbreed, but they could if they were put together. That was a little clue for me. It's like, I could interbreed with a female, regular, normal human being, but it's not my calling. It's not my calling to be in a relationship with a regular person. In fact, I'm not able to do it. That's what I've found again and again. It's like, I'm just too different. I'm a different species. Now, could I potentially interbreed with someone who was more like me, a female more like me? I think so. I think they're very rare. I think, though, someday they may be less rare. And this is what I think. This is where it gets more into speculation. The other stuff I'm saying, I think is pretty much based on solid observation. The next part is speculation. This is extrapolating my observations into certain conclusions and then projecting them forward in time. I think what is going to happen in human evolution is that the old species, regular old Homo sapiens that's doing its thing and having lots of kids and exploiting the world and building up its technology and doing its economy stuff and destroying nature and all that and living their lives as comfortably as possible, often abusing their children in all sorts of overt or subtle ways, the normal things that human beings do. I think they're going to die out. I think they are going to die out probably like the Neanderthals died out. A lot of them are just going to straight up die out, and some will have some aspects of their DNA, of their selves, of their consciousness absorbed into a new species of which I believe I am a representative, that I think is more fit with the reality of the world. I think I represent the future. I think, from what I've seen from the comments on this YouTube channel, a lot of the people who are watching this are part of this new species. And I think it's very hard at this point in time, at this point in human evolution, to be a part of this new species because the old species still is incredibly dominant, has a lot of power. There aren't communities really for the new evolution of consciousness. It's still so stigmatized, even hated, put down. Children are told, do not be that. You cannot be that. The parts of them that are like that are pushed down, crushed, told to be normal, forced to be normal and regular, forced to be the old way. But I think this can shift. And I think, and this is my speculation, is that with the destruction of nature, with the crushing of our world, it's not hard to look around and see this world is going to hell. And I don't mean a religious hell. It's going into garbage and shit. We're ruining it. Ruining so many things about this beautiful planet. But I think what's going to happen as the result of that, of all that shit, is it is going to bear so much destruction on the world that at some point these new parts of human consciousness, this newly evolved part of human consciousness, is going to become a trait that is considered positive, a trait for which evolution will select, which will become somehow something that is more in sync with our future. And I think it could happen quickly. Now I'm saying, okay, it happened in a couple of years, my shift to actually allowing myself, wanting to, being able to embody more of these evolved psychologically conscious traits, if I'm going to call it that. I think it can also happen quickly in the evolution of our greater species and our world. When is it going to happen? When do I speculate? I'll throw out a number, 35 years. But I just wouldn't be surprised if some ripple happens where these traits of increased evolved consciousness just spread across the planet and take over the old species. And the old way begins to die out, and it makes way for something truly and profoundly new and evolved, really evolved.